this is a nigga right here, y'all. I swear this is a nigga right here. I don't keep niggas around me, y'all. I don't keep people around me, bruh. Like, for real, this is my wife weekend. This her birthday weekend. I put a skirt up on my dog.
Show that. I love that, bro.
I love you, my nigga. I swear to God.
I love you so much.
I swear. On my mama, cuz. He been there through it all, bruh. When I lost Timmy, when I lost Booney, he been through it all, y'all. Like, for real. Like, I'm knowing he 100. Never question shit about him, bruh. Like, when I say you my nigga day one, don't touch them L's together, I promise you.
I already know.
You don't touch the L. Mark my word. Remember I told you this, cuz we gonna hang out so strong. I had to put up on my dog right quick. We on the block. Yeah, they say Dro got it hot. Finna go to the car lot. Are you pressing? Hey, my kids like New Balances too. That's crazy. New Balance making them. Woo. You spun the chat right quick. You spun the quick little chat. They one stand is all up. I swear.
I want you to think about this as we begin.
What's up, y'all? So, let's talk about it. If you go out of town with your significant other, regardless to you having an argument or whatever you have going on, and you're somewhere, you're not in your safe space, you're not in your hometown, you're not where you live at, I don't care, I'm not gonna leave him. So the young lady that went out of town on a cabin trip with her boyfriend finally made a post. I'm gonna put it on the screen. She's saying how much she loved him. Regardless to what she's saying, it's not adding up and it's not making sense because you're not telling what happened that night. Y'all were never supposed to leave each other. So if he asked you to put him out, you were supposed to keep going back to that hotel room. Why wasn't his family contacted? If you seen the sirens going towards where you dropped him off at, why you don't have a legitimate story to tell the family? Justice for Dro. This is an active investigation, and I hope and pray that they lock her ass up.
She posted the videos on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. 354 of them. Every memory, every laugh, every private moment. All of it uploaded to the public in a single day. And nobody in his family gave her permission to do that. That's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know is this. The man who walked that bridge, who stood at that Circle K, who talked to the people who don't talk to the press, he says there were 4 people in that car. Not 2. 4. And if that's true, then everything you've heard about what happened to Tyrone Davis Jr. is a story built on the wrong foundation. Stay with me, because by the time we're done here, you're going to understand why one unanswered question, what side of the car did she get out of, changes everything. And why a detective who's supposed to be searching for the truth refused to answer it. Let's go back to Gainesville. Before we get into the details of that bridge, before we talk about what was found on those guardrails and why the body was moved before the EMTs ever arrived, we need to talk about a man named Polo. Polo is not a YouTuber. He's not a content creator chasing views. He's the kind of person who gets in his car and drives to the scene himself. He walks the routes. He looks at the angles. He makes the phone calls. And he's been doing that since the very beginning of this case. When Lulu, Tyrone's girlfriend, resurfaced publicly after weeks of silence and relaunched the YouTube channel packed with Tyrone's personal videos, most people either defended her or attacked her. Polo did something different. He observed. He noted who promoted the page. He noted who stayed quiet. And he noticed that one of Tyrone's own friends got on Instagram to tell people to go follow her page. Polo's response to that? Direct and unfiltered. He said, "If this was my dog, I ain't doing that. That's the last person who was with my dog. I'm not teaming up with somebody so much as suspected in his death." That's the kind of statement that gets you called a hater. That gets you dismissed as someone who can't let go. Except when you actually look at everything that followed, the physical evidence, the witness accounts, the blood on the guardrails nobody was supposed to find. it stops sounding like emotion. It starts sounding like pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is exactly what this case demands. Let's start with the videos. Because the YouTube channel isn't just a grief story. It might be a crime. Lulu uploaded 354 videos. Personal videos. Videos from Tyrone's life. Videos that were stored on accounts that belonged to him. And she did it without the family's blessing, without their knowledge, and, according to Polo, without the legal right to do so. This is where most people made a mistake. They debated whether it was tasteful, whether it was the right time, whether it was her way of grieving. Those are human conversations, but they miss the legal reality. Every major platform, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, has legacy contact policies. These exist for a reason. When someone dies, their accounts don't automatically transfer to whoever has the password. Accessing a deceased person's accounts without legal documentation, without being named a digital executor, without a court order, without formal consent, that's not a gray area. That's unauthorized access. In many jurisdictions, it rises to the level of identity theft. It's a felony. So, here's the question Polo asked, and it deserves a real answer. Did Tyrone name her as his digital executor? Is there paperwork? Did he formally give her control over his accounts before he died? Or did she simply have the phone know the passwords and make a decision? Because if it's the latter, if she just walked into those accounts and started operating them, then those 354 videos aren't a tribute. They're evidence of unauthorized access. And the timing, Valentine's Day Eve, 47 days after his death, raises questions that won't stop asking themselves. Why then? Why not immediately, in those first raw days of grief? Why not with the family present, with their support, with their blessing? Why the silence first, and then the flood? Here's what's even more interesting. The answer to those questions might tell us something about what she knew and when she knew it. Now we go to the bridge. This is where the physical evidence starts to crack the official narrative wide open. And it cracks it because of a detail so small, so specific, that if you blink you miss it. Polo didn't blink. The Circle K. That's where Lulu said she was. She claimed she was parked at the Circle K gas station when the incident occurred. She said that from that location, she saw the EMTs coming, and that's how she knew they were heading under the bridge. Polo went to that Circle K. He stood where she said she stood. He looked at the routes. He studied the angles. And his conclusion was not a guess or an opinion, it was geometry. The EMTs didn't come from the direction of the Circle K. They came from the opposite direction. They came from a completely different approach route. From where Lulu says she was standing, it would have been physically impossible to see those EMTs and know they were heading to the bridge. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. That's a direct quote. And when someone on the ground at the actual location, with the actual sight lines in front of them, says something doesn't make sense mathematically, you need to ask yourself, what does it mean when the witness's account breaks down on its most basic, verifiable detail? Either she was somewhere else entirely, or she wasn't watching the EMTs at all. She already knew where they were going. Or someone told her what to say and got the geography wrong. Any of those options changes the story. All of them matter. But here's the detail that stopped me cold. The detail that, once you hear it, reframes everything that came before it. When the EMTs arrived, when the paramedics finally got to that bridge, Tyrone Davis Jr. was not where he originally landed. He had been moved. 2 people were at the scene before the EMTs. They identified themselves as nurses or doctors. And according to Polo's account, those 2 people relocated Tyrone's body from its original position. They moved him before the professionals arrived, before anyone with official authority was on the ground. Now, there's a version of that story that sounds compassionate. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they saw a man lying near traffic and panicked. Maybe they moved him to get him away from the cars, to protect him. But here is what happens when you move a body from a potential crime scene, regardless of your intentions. You contaminate it. You destroy the forensic integrity of the position. You make it impossible to reconstruct what actually happened from the physical evidence. You eliminate the ability to determine trajectory, impact point, angle, force. Everything that accident reconstruction depends on, the science of figuring out what really happened, relies on the scene being preserved. And when those two people moved Tyrone, that science became impossible. Was it an act of compassion? Maybe. But ask yourself a harder question. If those two individuals had reported exactly where Tyrone originally was, reported every detail of his original position, cooperated fully and completely with investigators, then their decision, however misguided, could have been corrected in the record. The original location could still be documented. Instead, according to Polo, they were not entirely forthcoming when they spoke to the family. They were, in his words, not talking so thoroughly when they got interviewed. They gave accounts that didn't fully capture what they had seen and what they had done. Why would two people who were simply trying to help a stranger be reluctant to discuss exactly where he was lying when they found him? That is a question this case has not answered. Now we get to the blood. If you've been following this case at all, you know that the investigation has been haunted by what wasn't collected, what wasn't preserved, what wasn't properly documented. But Polo went looking for what was actually there. And what was there on those guardrails tells a story the official narrative never accounted for. There was blood on the guardrails. Not near where the body was found. Near where the original impact happened, closer to the guardrails, in the area where Tyrone was before those two people moved him. Blood. On the road. On the guardrails. In the location that corresponds to the original position, the position that was compromised before investigators arrived. The small things. That's what Polo keeps coming back to. Pay attention to the small things, and you don't miss the big things. If they would have paid attention to those guardrails, they would have known there was blood over there. But here's the catch. Here's the devastating, infuriating catch. The police never picked anything up from off the scene. Not the pizza box with the time stamps on it. Not the other physical evidence. Nothing. They treated this as an accident. A tragic accident. A domestic situation gone wrong. A man who jumped from a moving car. And so they responded accordingly. They looked at the scene through the lens of accident, not homicide. And when you look through the wrong lens, you miss what the right lens would have found. There is blood on those guardrails. Blood that doesn't match the official narrative of where Tyrone was found. Blood that suggests the story of this incident is not the story that was told. Let me tell you about the 50 seconds. Because in the official narrative, the timeline is built around this detail. The car was reportedly seen, caught on some form of record or witness account, going from one point to another in approximately 50 seconds. And the argument, the defense of the official story, is that in 50 seconds, there wasn't enough time for anything deliberate to have happened. Polo pushed back on that directly. And he made a point that should make every person listening stop and think. Inside a car, 50 seconds is a long time. Sit in your vehicle right now. Look at a clock. Count to 50. Think about everything you could say in 50 seconds. Think about everything that could happen. Think about how much the dynamic inside a confined space can shift in less than a minute. The argument that 50 seconds was too fast for anything intentional to occur assumes that what happened took time, took struggle, took effort. But the human body is fragile in ways that don't require extended violence. And a vehicle moving at speed, with multiple people inside, on an elevated road, the physics of what can happen in 50 seconds is not the same as the physics of 50 seconds in a parking lot. The car was not going 25 miles per hour. That's another thing Polo states directly. The road, the approach, the geometry of that bridge, it doesn't match 25 miles per hour as a speed for that portion of the route. He knows that area. He's been there. He drove it. And when you combine a higher speed with 4 people in the vehicle, with the blood on the guardrails, with the body moved from its original position, 50 seconds starts to look less like exoneration and more like a window that nobody looked through carefully enough. For people in the car, this is the claim that restructures everything. This is the detail that, if verified, makes every other piece of the puzzle fit differently. Polo didn't speculate about this. He was explicit. These are not his words. They are the words of people who saw that car. People who were there. People who saw it go down that road under that underpass. People who, as Polo described it, everybody was hanging and swinging. Multiple individuals. A group dynamic. Not a couple having an argument in an isolated vehicle. For people. And this is where the detective's non-answer becomes explosive. Because when investigators were asked, when the question was directly raised, What side of the car did Lulu get out of? The response was, it's still an ongoing investigation. Not. She got out on the passenger side, which is consistent with the driver's side account. Not. Here is where she was in the vehicle. Not. Here is the seating arrangement. Silence wrapped in bureaucratic language. Polo explains exactly why. If you say what side she got out of, you automatically reveal whether there were other people in that car. Because if she exited from a particular position, if the answer to that simple spatial question creates an inconsistency with only 2 occupants, then the 2-person story falls apart in an instant. They can't answer the question without confirming the witnesses. And they haven't confirmed the witnesses publicly. So the question stays open, wrapped in ongoing investigation, sitting there, unanswered. This is what investigative failure looks like from the outside. Not necessarily malice. Not necessarily conspiracy. Sometimes it's simpler and more heartbreaking than that. Sometimes it's the consequence of treating a crime scene like an accident scene from the very first moment. And once you make that call, once you categorize an incident as non-criminal, every subsequent piece of evidence gets filtered through that decision. The blood on the guardrails becomes a footnote. The moved body becomes a logistical note. The 4 witnesses who saw that car become rumors. And the family is left standing outside in the cold, passing out flyers, demanding answers to questions the investigation was never designed to answer. Let's talk about what Tyrone Davis Jr. was doing in the moments under that bridge. Because this is the part of the story that deserves to be heard by every person who has written him off as a man who chose to leave this world. Polo stated this with complete certainty, with the kind of conviction that comes not from emotion but from information. Tyrone was fighting for his life under that bridge. There are people who heard him, people who were at the scene, people who were present in those desperate minutes before he lost consciousness. And what they heard was not a man who had made peace with dying, not a man who had jumped and was fading. What they heard was a man fighting, reaching, trying to stay awake, trying to hold on. He got up. Under that bridge, after whatever happened in that car, after whatever occurred in those 50 seconds on that elevated road, Tyrone Davis Jr. got up. Before he collapsed, he tried. This is not speculation. This is testimony. And the people who carry that testimony, who were present, who heard his voice, they know things about what happened in those final moments that have never been made public. They know what he said. They know what he sounded like. They know whether he was alone or whether there were others. They know the truth of those minutes. And they are still silent. Polo's frustration with that silence is deep and real. He doesn't express it with anger at those individuals specifically because he understands fear. He understands what it means to know something and also understand the cost of saying it. But he says it plainly. You can't make a person stand on business. You can know the right thing. You can know the truth. And you can still choose not to say it. That choice has consequences. Not for Polo. Not for the internet. For those children who are growing up right now, being told a version of their father's final moments that doesn't match what witnesses actually saw. Let's address something directly, because it matters. There are people in this case on all sides who have failed. Polo names it clearly. Certain people in the family didn't stand on business. People got in the way of doing the right thing early on. And because the right things weren't done at the beginning, the investigation is now playing catch-up. Things that should have been documented immediately weren't. Evidence that should have been collected is gone. The forensic window closed before anyone inside the official structure treated this as anything other than a sad accident. That is not abstract criticism. That is the specific, cascading consequence of the first decision, accident, not homicide, echoing through every moment that followed. But here's the piece that cuts deepest. The reason the police haven't been forced to answer those questions, the reason Lulu hasn't been compelled to explain the geometry of the Circle K, the reason 4 witnesses can still be sitting on what they know, is because the scene was never properly treated as a crime scene. Tyrone Davis Jr. didn't die on December 27th. That detail matters more than it might seem. He was alive under that bridge. He died later, in the hospital. And because he didn't die at the scene, because the legal threshold for triggering a homicide investigation wasn't met in that first response, the scene was processed as something it wasn't. By the time anyone connected the dots, the evidence was gone, moved, or compromised. The pizza box with its timestamps, the phone, the physical evidence. None of it was collected because no one was collecting it. Sometimes you have to get on the ground and find out yourself. That's what Polo did. And what he found is a case that was solvable, that might still be solvable, if the people who know what happened decide that the truth matters more than protection. The autopsy. Let's talk about the autopsy. When the initial findings didn't sit right with someone, when the conclusions didn't match the questions being asked, the case was escalated, sent up to a higher level. A second review. That's not routine. That's not standard procedure for an unambiguous accident. That happens when something in the initial findings doesn't align with the physical reality. When a medical examiner looks at the evidence and something doesn't add up. What that second review found, what it will ultimately conclude, hasn't been released at the time this script was written. But the fact that it was requested, the fact that someone in the system looked at the original findings and said, no, we need to look at this again, that matters. It means someone inside the official structure has the same questions as the people on the ground. It means the conclusion of accident is not as settled as it was presented. It means there is still a door open. And on the other side of that door is either confirmation that this was what it appeared to be, or something else entirely. Something that would require every person who shaped the early narrative to answer for the story they told. There is something about this case that keeps coming back to the cameras. Polo addressed this directly because it's been used as a shield, a way of closing the conversation. There were no cameras on that bridge, so we can't know what happened. That's the suggestion. That's the implied end of the inquiry. Polo says that's a lie. He posted the evidence himself. The cameras, the angles, the positions. There are cameras that point directly under that bridge. Directly on that bridge. Multiple cameras. The statement that there are no cameras watching that location is factually incorrect, and Polo documented it. So now the question shifts. It's not, were there cameras? The question becomes, what did those cameras capture? And why is that footage not part of the public conversation around this case? When you find that a key piece of exculpatory or incriminating evidence exists and hasn't been addressed, you have to ask yourself what narrative that serves. Footage that showed nothing suspicious would close this case. Footage that showed something concerning would open it permanently. So, what does it mean that the footage exists, but the conversation around it has been allowed to focus on the assumption that no footage exists at all? This is the thing about small details. When they're wrong, when a basic factual claim about camera placement turns out to be incorrect, it doesn't just undermine that single point. It asks you to revisit every other basic factual claim that hasn't been verified on the ground by someone who actually went there. Let's talk about Lulu's history for a moment because Polo brought it up and it belongs in the record. He spoke to people who know her, people from her social circle. And what they described is not a portrait of a woman who was a passive, frightened bystander on that bridge. They described a history of anger, a pattern of physical confrontation with Tyrone, prior incidents where she had jumped on him, attacked him, altercations that people around them had witnessed. This is not character assassination. This is context. Because when you're trying to understand how an ordinary night became a tragedy, the emotional and behavioral history between two people is not irrelevant. It's the foundation. It tells you whether a moment of violence is explainable as a sudden aberration or whether it fits a pattern that had been building. Polo is careful here. He's not saying this makes her guilty of a specific crime. He's saying it makes the accident narrative less defensible. It makes the idea that this was simply a chaotic moment with no antecedents harder to sustain. And it raises a question about the relationship dynamics that investigators should have explored deeply and, based on everything we know about how the scene was handled, probably didn't. Now I want to step back from the evidence for a moment and talk about something more uncomfortable. This case is not just about what happened on that bridge. It's about what happens after. About the choices people make when they know the truth and decide whether to speak it. Polo talks about this with a kind of resigned clarity. He says nobody can force nobody to do the right thing. He knows that. He understands that the people who were in that car, the people who heard Tyrone's voice, the people who saw what the streets saw, they have made calculations. They've weighed what it costs to come forward against what it costs to stay silent. And right now, for enough of them, silence is winning. But here's what Polo also says, and it's the part that has stayed with me. Never think it was a clean getaway. Don't think for one day that you got away. Because the truth has always been there. And eventually, whether through the second autopsy, through the witnesses who haven't spoken yet, through the camera footage that does exist, the trail of receipts leads somewhere. It always does. There's a version of this story where justice moves slowly, where the people who know what happened carry that knowledge for years, thinking they've escaped it. And then one day, one detail, one person who finally decides that Tyrone's children deserve to know the truth more than the guilty deserve protection, cracks it open. And everything that's been buried comes out at once. That day may still be coming. And when it does, the people who were silent will have to answer for that silence. Not to the internet. Not to the content creators. To those kids. Let me be precise about what we know, what Polo asserts, and what remains unverified. Because this case deserves that precision. What we know, Tyrone Davis Jr. was found under a bridge in Gainesville on December 27th, injured and alive. He later died at the hospital. The initial investigation treated the incident as an accident, a man who jumped or fell from a moving vehicle. The girlfriend, Lulu, was present or nearby and gave an account of events. What Polo asserts and has documented or provided sourcing for, the Circle K location she claimed to be at does not offer sightlines to where she says she saw the EMTs coming from. That can be verified by anyone willing to go to the location. The body was moved from its original position before EMTs arrived by two individuals who were not fully forthcoming in their accounts afterward. Blood was found on the guardrails in a location that does not match the official description of where Tyrone was discovered. There are cameras covering that bridge location. The police did not collect physical evidence from the scene. What Polo alleges from street-level witnesses, for people were in that car, not two. People were present who heard Tyrone's voice and saw him attempting to get up before he collapsed. Lulu had a prior history of physical altercations with Tyrone. What remains officially unconfirmed, the second autopsy results, the footage from the bridge cameras, the identities and accounts of the alleged additional witnesses, the precise original position of Tyrone's body before it was moved. The distinction matters. Not because doubt should protect the guilty, but because the path to accountability runs through verified truth, not allegation. And the verified truth here, the things that can be checked, that Polo has checked, already tells a story that the official narrative cannot adequately explain. What does Tyrone Davis Jr. deserve? He deserves to not have his death explained away as the act of a man who chose to leave his children. He deserves for his final moments, those desperate, fighting moments under that bridge, alive, reaching, to be understood for what they actually were. He deserves for his children to grow up knowing not just that their father loved them, but that when the moment came, he fought. He didn't give up. He was not a man who jumped. The official narrative robs him of that. It asks his children to accept a story that says he chose to leave them, that he opened a door on a moving bridge and stepped into the dark. Polo says that's not what happened. The witnesses who were there say that's not what happened. The blood on the guardrails says that's not what happened. The geometry of the Circle K says that's not what happened. What happened is still, technically, being investigated. A second autopsy is pending. A family is fighting. A community is watching. And somewhere in Gainesville right now, there are people who know exactly what happened in that car in those 50 seconds. People who were laughing and hanging. People who know what was said, what was done, what was decided. They haven't spoken yet. Here's what I can't stop thinking about. There's a particular kind of weight that comes from knowing the truth and choosing not to say it. And there's a different kind of weight, the kind that doesn't ever leave, that comes from being the children of a man whose death was never properly investigated. Those kids are going to grow up. They're going to get older, and they're going to start asking questions. And the answers they find are going to be shaped by what happens in the next few months. Whether the autopsy results in a reclassification, whether any of those witnesses decide to come forward, whether the camera footage is ever made part of the public record. But here's the harder question, the one this case ultimately asks. At what point does the decision to protect someone you know become a decision to abandon someone you don't? Because every person in Gainesville who saw that car and said nothing Every person who knows what really happened in those 50 seconds and hasn't told investigators. They made a choice. And that choice has a cost. It's just a cost paid by someone who can't advocate for themselves. Someone who is fighting to stay alive on a bridge and lost. Someone whose children are waiting for a truth that the people who hold it keep deciding not to give. That's what haunts me about this case. Not the violence. Not even the potential cover-up. It's the ordinary human capacity for silence. For self-protection. For the calculation that my safety matters more than his truth. We all have that capacity. Most of us never get tested the way those witnesses have been tested. We'll never stand at the edge of knowing something devastating and have to decide whether to speak. But somewhere tonight, someone is sitting with this case on their mind. Sitting with what they saw. Sitting with what they heard. Sitting with the sound of a man fighting to stay conscious under a bridge in Gainesville. And they're deciding whether today is the day. If you know something about what happened to Tyrone Davis Jr., the path forward is not a YouTube comment. It's not a Facebook message to a content creator. It's a call to the Gainesville Police Department. That's where information can actually be used. That's where it can matter. That's where it can become the thing that gives those kids the truth they deserve. The Davis family has been standing outside in the cold, passing out flyers, showing up, fighting for a man they loved in every way they know how to fight. They see you. And if Tyrone Davis Jr. is watching anything from wherever the dead watch, he sees them too. Justice for Drew. One final thought. Because this isn't just a case. It's a lesson in attention. Pay attention to the small things. That's Polo's entire philosophy distilled. The Circle K location. The direction the EMTs came from. The exact position of the body before anyone moved it. The blood on the guardrails nobody was supposed to find. The question a detective wouldn't answer about which side of the car she got out of. Each of those is a small thing. A detail. The kind of detail that gets lost in the noise of a case when everyone is looking at the big picture. But add them up. Put them in a line. Let 2 + 2 = 4. And they point in a direction that the official story cannot explain. The truth has always been there. It's time to let it out.